everybody, and welcome to the RHAP B&B for week 9 of Survivor 48. My name is Mike Bloom. I am back. Sadly, Liana and I, like two ships passing in the night. Of course, she is undergoing her own big move, as we're going to talk about a very big move on this week's Survivor. So please, if you're out there on the interwebs, wish her well. But listen, we may not be whole, but we're not going to skimp on a podcast for you this week. It's an episode that is filled to the brim, certainly more than 2% of content to talk about. And we'll be memorializing a man who was certainly not lactose intolerant. He may have been intolerant of his behavior. But let's get into it with not one, but two absolutely wonderful guests to break down not only this episode, but to get their thoughts on the season as well as just Survivor in general. First, let me welcome in the familiar face of always fantastic Maggie Morgan. Maggie, how are you?
Hi, Mike. I'm doing amazing. I'm so excited to be here. I'm sad I'm missing Liana this week, but wishing her a great and smooth move. And yeah, I'm excited to chat. I'm excited about who's with me and excited to get started.
Well, let's talk about who's with you, because she's at about like the proximity that Shaheen was to Joe when he was whispering in his ear late at night. There we go. That's a true wombat gesture right there. I'm thrilled to welcome this person to the B&B. She is an online fitness coach. She is the guru behind the Energy Academy. But most importantly, she is the guest on this week's RHAP B&B. So happy to welcome for the first time, Lauren Girard. Hi, Laura.
Hi. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh
this
my
is
God.
So fun.
We're so happy to have you. I mean, I guess the first thing I want to start with was just widening the scope outside of this episode, outside of this season. Let's talk about your access point to Survivor in general. I'm always intrigued, especially in the post-Netflix era, to hear about people's origin stories with the show. So what's yours?
I'm a new fan. I'm a little ashamed to say that. I started watching in 2021. I was a Big Brother fan growing up, and that's actually something we bonded about in college. And then I always thought Survivor was kind of like Big Brother on the beach. I didn't realize they had to like survive. And then Maggie was like, you would actually like this. You should watch this.
Yeah.
And so I started with Cagayan in 2021. And I've been watching all the recent seasons. I went back. I'm trying to do a chronological rewatch, but you know, that slows down a little bit. I'm just started season 10. So,
okay.
Yeah. So I wouldn't consider myself a casual. I know all the lore, but new fan, fake fan.
The chronology though, like, cause I did the same thing. I started at 1 and went on, and like, I now do feel strongly about the Shannon Gus system. If you can find the chart, get the chart.
She always has. She texted that to me and was like, if you're going to do this, you have to do it the right way.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting, because I don't know. You are the ones that have been more experiential with my personal recommendation, which is the chronological method of like, if you're going to do it, start from the beginning.
I felt like I'm committed. Like I did Cagayan, and then I went back and did 6, 7, 12, 13, 16, 20, or 15 too. And then I was like, well, I'm already half-assing this. I might as well whole-ass it. So, but it took me like 3 months to get through Borneo, because I was like, TikTok, let's pick this up a little bit.
I'm saying, like, if you start from 1 and move on, like, you're going to lose people at like Thailand, you know? That took me like a month.
But what I usually recommend people is like, if you have a season that you're not into, then just skip to the next one. Like, not every episode is not mandatory viewing, but you know, if you're watching something, because I think the other thing that also comes, listen, we're all living, breathing souls that have very different tastes in a variety of things. And so there's also something where like, you could watch a well-acclaimed season and be like, that was kind of mid. And then you're like getting to the bottom of the Gus system and you're like, oh, wait, I actually really like this season that nobody really likes.
Totally. Survivor Fiji. Love Survivor Fiji. I'm a Survivor Fiji truther. Obviously, I was on the Gabon podcast. I'm a big Gabon girl. So, you know.
Can I quote you on that?
Yes. I think that Maggie Morgan, big Gabon girl.
Big Gabon girl. That's what we always say about her. Big Gabon girl.
But I also think, like, I think that's maybe on Shannon's, like, completionist only is Gabon. But, you know, something for everybody.
Well, regardless of how you watch Survivor, it only matters if you watch Survivor. And that brings us to this season, this episode. So I'm curious, you know, it's actually really interesting, Laura, because you talk about whether or not to go back and binge these old school seasons. And for what it's worth, I actually feel like 48, and this comes with benefits and drawbacks, is maybe one of the most like old school tastes seasons in the new era. which I think is incredibly interesting because I think a lot of the meta around the new era is it's only full of super duper fans who have to play super fast and super hard, and everyone's strategizing, and everyone's saying good game, guys, and pats on the back and all that stuff. And I feel like in many different ways, Survivor 48, again, for better or for worse, is kind of the exception to that rule.
Yeah, do you think we hit like the super fan breaking point where now they've cycled around to looking for people who are less familiar? I remember listening to the preseason interviews, and David, are we allowed to say?
Yeah.
Are we allowed to say names?
Hey.
Like David not knowing who Jeff Probst is, like that's going to add a different flavor to a season. It has to.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, David, if like we're just gonna
The
like
flavor
jump
of
in,
milk.
We got to dive right in.
Yeah, if we're just gonna jump in, I texted Laura while I was watching the episode and was just like, it's so funny because David is so right and also so bad. Like the combination of like, you know what's going on, and he was completely correct, but the execution was just like so wrong in so many different ways. And I said that I think we were robbed of seeing David in the Big Brother house being an early jury flameout. Oh my God. David's like 1 week on the block, early jury flameout would have been mwah. It would have been like Pauly Calafiore, you know?
Do you think he would freak out though? Like, I think you can say a lot of things about how he played, but he doesn't seem like freak out.
Wasn't the big thing
like,
that nobody was listening
sane.
to him because he was so quote unquote paranoid, right? That like, oh my God, he's running around doing all this stuff. So imagine that magnified within the creature comforts of him being able to like fist a gallon of milk every day like he wants.
He's just he's just too assertive. Like that's the thing. He was really assertive about what he wanted to do, which then made when you're playing with all of the other leader type assertive people, like they're not going to like that, you know? And that's the issue when you're like strong people stay strong. It's like, no, you want people in your alliance that will listen to you. So like, why are you trying to align with people who, and I understand the meat shield thing. I was just like, David, like, yes, you are completely correct. Look to your left. There's a bunch of people who will vote with you on this, who will vote out Shaheen, who will, you know what I mean? It's just, he just couldn't. He didn't have the one thing that I said actually last week when I was guesting on the Amazing Race podcast with Jess. I was saying the number one thing you need in all of these games, Amazing Race, Survivor, Big Brother, is adaptability. Like you have to be able to adapt your game plan and play with the people you're playing with and look around and be like, this isn't working. I need to do something different. And David just like was not adaptable.
Do you feel like it hurt him not having seen like at least a handful of seasons? Because I feel like with David, when he speaks, when he talks about what he sees that's going on, he's right. Like his instincts are good.
That's what I'm saying.
But you know how it's like, oh, everybody's playing chess and he's playing checkers. Like, no, he's seeing the game, but it's like everybody else is seeing like words in the branches of the trees, and he's seeing like the bead slide puzzle at the dentist where he's like, we want him out, so we get him out. They're working together, so we get them out. And it's like there's
nuance.
There's more.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good question. I think where it really comes in handy is the timing of it all. Like again, I will repeat with what you both said, but a lot of people have been saying that David does have, from what he expresses, good intuition outlook. Was it 100% accurate? No, I think remember the whole reason why he was led onto this path in the first place, because he erroneously believed, well, Shaheen picked Camilla for that challenge, and therefore they're working together. But
can I push back on that?
Please, Emily, go ahead.
It looks like Shaheen in the next episode is like, I want to make a move, and wanting to work with Camilla. So
which is wild because Camilla and Kyle 2 days beforehand had thrown Shaheen under the bus by being like, I think he has an idol, David. Shouldn't we get rid of him? Like such an odd arc. But so all that is to say that I think his understanding of social like standings and groupings is really salient. I think he does a good job of being able to clock that and being observant of his surroundings. I think where it falls short is in a couple of ways. First, it's this idea of like, it's almost electability in a way of like, your platform can be incredibly strong and complicated, but if you are not communicating it in a very good way, if you don't have that electability to you, then like, people are not going to listen. They're not going to
social game.
What if he just like never got to the end of a season and he doesn't know what the jury does?
Yeah, that could be true as well. Yeah,
like he's like it's the fire making, and then that's it. Like,
even like
he's like, it's going to be an arm wrestle. Like, what's the end game? That's it. I think if we can criticize him for anything strategy wise, in good faith.
Uh-huh.
It's a lack of understanding of the end game, because even if you got to the final 6
Mhm.
with Mary, with Joe and Eva, with Shaheen, with
Mhm.
Kyle, why would you be the person people voted for if you're the one picking fights? If you're the one like pushing? Did he think he was just gonna comp out until the end?
I don't think he sees himself that way.
He
like I
certainly
said,
did not.
like,
Yeah.
I watched a couple of the exit interviews, and like he came in hot on a couple of those.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was like, whoa.
He was so forward as to tell me that apparently Chrissy and Cedric both told him at Ponderosa that they would have voted for him had he sat in the end. So to answer your question as to like, why does he keep pursuing this strategy when you have people like Camilla and Star at Tribal Council being like, yeah, you probably shouldn't do this. He's saying, no, you're the ones that are wrong. Actually, they said that I was right in what I was doing.
Yeah,
sure. And
he's a real renegade. He's a real free thinker.
And honestly, I agree with Fishback with what he said on the Know-It-Alls this week. I loved him on the season. What a fabulous villain.
Oh, great.
That we had. He was a villain. He was right, but also not.
He was
good
good
at execution. I loved watching him. I think he would be great to, maybe not for like something like 50, but I think if you are ever going to do like another Heroes Villain season, get him on the Villains Tribe. I think that he's really fun to watch, and I thought he brought a ton to the season. Like I think he's a great Survivor character. I was not sad to lose him because I felt like this was exactly for the story arc. Like this, I was like, yeah, this is the moment for this.
Right.
But I really enjoyed his presence on the season. If I like, I know it probably seems like based off of what I said earlier that I'm like not a fan, but like huge fan of him giving us something to talk about and like root against.
I feel like everyone on this season is a character.
Yeah.
And with David especially, like, how do I say that? How do I want to say this? It is fun to go back and watch old seasons of Survivor pre-Twitter consciousness.
Yeah.
And I feel like he gave us shades of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very grateful for that.
That's the thing. He was very much like the reason why he was so upfront about who he was wasn't necessarily about social media backlash, and more so I think just him being like, it's because I'm awesome. And you should all realize how awesome I am.
He said, basically, I'm a badass.
Yeah, and he lived down every second of that syllable. I mean, the other thing to go back to, where he went wrong and whether his, lack of seasonal information affected this, I think it might have come from, looking back to what Shaheen was able to plant when we find out this big Extreme Ways flashback that's starting like 4 or 5 days ago. He was already starting the crusade against David. I think that's something that you learn through watching enough and knowing how much things time out. Whereas to your point, I think David was only thinking like 2-3 days ahead, not necessarily, all right, if I set up this move, then therefore we're going to set up this move next. He was very much like, all we have to do is just get to the 6. And then from there, I'll figure things out.
Mike, I have a question about Shaheen and the way the show is portraying him. And I want to get your take on it. And yours too, Laura. We haven't talked about this.
Here.
I do feel I saw Great Survivor Drew Basile in BBC or BCC. What is it? The
sir, I saw him on the BBC.
No,
I know he goes to Oxford, but
the
at BCC. Yes, check it out if you want some live messages from some of your Survivor favorites, and also me talking about the show at the time.
So I saw him post something on there during the episode that I was like, yes. And he said that Shaheen is getting the teeny edit, where it's like, this is somebody who should be a good Survivor player, but like the show is kind of giving them like dodo music in the background when they're talking strategy a little bit, or like portraying them as like, well, obviously this is what's going on, and then being like womp womp because it's not. And so I'm interested in this story that they're portraying about him, because I'm like, does this mean, like tinfoil hat, this is the losing finalist? Like what? And we're trying to explain why. Like, are we maybe setting us up for like, oh, he's about to like really get his footing under him, and wow, what a comeback story here. Like, I'm just intrigued by that and interested in what you guys think.
What do you think, Laura?
I'm surprised you're reading into the Edgic that much. I feel like you're usually sort of against that, but I'm interested.
Yeah.
You also love Shaheen.
I do.
We do love Shaheen.
Well, Yes, I would like to see him and chat with him in life. Hey, Shaheen.
I mean, now that you know the way he can approach you, if he really has
Yeah,
something secret to divulge
grab my
to you.
face. Just grab my face at an event.
She really responds well.
Well,
to
that's
that.
the thing, though. I mean, I do
Rapping.
think that there's a lot of loud music, a lot of voices at the event. It actually feels like sometimes you have to really get up into someone's ear to like actually communicate and hear what the other person is saying. So maybe Shaheen's way of doing things, yes, maybe in a post-pandemic world is not the best, but does work in effectively communicating what you need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could have watched an hour of him slowly sinking back into that hammock with his eyes just staring straight
That's
ahead
like
in
the freaking Babadook. Like that image of Eva going down the hill and just the shadow looming over the horizon of like, what are you doing?
Yeah. If I can go really like bird's eye view for a second,
Please.
that theory makes a lot of sense to me.
Mhm.
I feel like, I do listen to On Fire with Jeff Probst.
No, it's great.
I'm a traitor.
No.
I feel like Jeff has a vision of what it means to be a survivor, that he is like trying to establish autonomy from the role of the superfan and also the casual, because his point is always, he always underscores like, he's probably the person on earth who knows the most about Survivor. I think that's a safe thing to say. And he's always like, but I've never played. I don't know. I don't know if I do well. And I think he's seems really passionate about establishing that like the game is what tests you and you cannot be your own control of how you will play. Like the island tests you. The game itself will expose how you are as a player, and what you've predetermined for yourself will not, like everything comes out in the wash. So people, Rachel didn't really get that edit last season, even as a super fan, because Rachel won. It worked for her. But with a Shaheen, with a Teeny, someone who is clearly like so cerebral about the game and so quick, and also has a bit of the meta commentary going on. Like I'm thinking about Shaheen doing the tribal voices during the challenge. Like Shaheen is the other end of the scale from David, who's sort of, he's big, like might makes right. If everybody likes me and I win the challenges, then I should win. There's like a path in the middle, which is like who the island selects. Like I feel like Jeff embraces the super fan culture, but he's also like, it's not the same. It is not being good at knowing how to be good at Survivor is not being good at Survivor.
Well, and I think that that's super fair of a perspective for Jeff to have. Like, talk about armchair quarterbacks. Like, I'm like the biggest but I would, in fact, not go on Survivor because I could not handle it. Like, and I'm sitting here and I'm be like, David should have done what, like, I'm like a total armchair quarterback. So I totally get Jeff being like, that would be his perspective. And I do think that makes sense, that that's something that then he would focus on in the sort of production editing of the show in general.
I mean, what I will say, going back to your question, is like, not to push back against the great Lanky Blanky himself and Drew Basile. I don't see the comparison. Now, I could see a universe where you're like, oh, if we're putting out the nuances of the David targeting, that yes, while Shaheen had this plan, I think a lot of people largely credit this move to Kyle, especially because Kyle was more of the present sort of push behind it, that he was the one that was getting into it with David more. He was the one that was starting to go to people like Joe and being like, look at what he's doing, huh? Shouldn't we get rid of him? That to me is a little different from Teeny, who we saw actively get left out of stuff, and granted, maybe it's because it's a difference of 2 seasons. Shaheen, with the exception of the Thomas vote, hasn't really been left out of anything. We haven't seen many situations where Shaheen has no idea what's going on, or Shaheen walks in confidently to tribal council thinking like, all right, buddy, it's your time to go, and then gets completely bum puzzled, with one exception. Teeny was sort of the Charlie Brown of 47, in that not only that, he also had a little bit though of like the Lucy energy, where he was like, all right, I've kicked so many footballs in my lifetime. This one's no different, and yet falls on his face every single time. So I don't necessarily know where this is going to lead to for Shaheen. I think that Survivor edits, with maybe a couple of exceptions, have gotten a little more complicated in recent seasons. And I think it also depends on what the course of the season is. Like Kenzie, for instance, did not have a spotless edit, but I think part of that is because she got blindsided at one point and lost her number one ally. I think when those mental foibles and traps happen, the editors are going to showcase it. If they don't, then they're not going to show them.
Yeah. And they have shown Shaheen quite a few times, like, cut back to back with Kyle telling us what his plan is and putting it into action. Then Shaheen gives us his version of events, and it's deeply misaligned. And he's not wrong for thinking that, and he's gonna end up fine.
And they've highlighted a couple times like Kyle getting one over on him, like Kyle specifically, like being like, oh yeah, and I mean, like, I'm lying to Shaheen.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing with going through the bag, right? Shaheen specifically went through Kyle's bag. And Kyle's like, how did this guy not find anything? It was basically sticking in my front pocket.
Shaheen being like, there is no way Kyle would lie to me. I could spot it.
Don't you see in like 3 weeks, Shaheen like tooth and nail defending Kyle and Camilla, being like, there's no way they're working together. They're both my number ones. And I'm pulling the wool over both of their eyes.
Yes.
And it's just like, I mean, Kyle and Camilla, those are my babies. Like, that's the whole season to me. That's Troy and Gabriella.
I mean,
like, I'm like, they have the whole island. Kyle's got his little pod, and then Camilla's.
Oh, I do like the Troy and Gabriella comparisons too, because it's very much like Jock and Brain, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, obviously Camilla is my favorite. Come on, come on.
That's our winner pick.
Yeah, she's a girl. She's a girl just like us. She's just a girl.
Did you like? I mean, I was thinking about like, okay, the second week in a row, I guess like second day in a row for Camilla, that she's making a reference to David and Even and Joe trying out for the Olympics. Then I did remember that I believe the Olympics were happening in Paris at the time that this season was being filmed. So clearly it was on the brain for her that she was making myriad references about it. Plus, she was surrounded basically by like, did you take a left turn at the wrong country and you wound up in Fiji and you're playing Survivor instead of hurling a discus somewhere in France?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's really frustrating. Like, I do think the meta conversation happening right now in the game is fairly interesting. Like, Survivor is not like, that's why it's outwit, outplay, outlast. Like, there are 3 parts of it. Like, it is a game that most anyone can win. And this sort of meta conversation we're having about like all of these people who are huge challenge threats, like, should be sticking together so that they're not picked off. Like, I don't know necessarily that I agree that that's like always the situation, but I do think that it's fair for them to want to do what's best for them, the same way that it's fair for Camilla to be like, go to the Olympics if you like. I want to have justice, because everybody wants to feel like it's the conversation that they have about who's deserving. Everybody wants to feel as though they are deserving. And there are so many different ways to play the game. And I think that that's why each system or each season becomes its own ecosystem about like, what do we value?
Yeah, and that's the conversation last week, right? And it's a sad state of affairs, and I do feel bad for someone like Chrissy, as an example, for her basically stating like, shit, well, maybe if I didn't wind up on a season with a bunch of people that wanted to play admirably and compare each other's muscle mass, I do a lot better. But like, the fact of the matter is, to your point, Survivor every season is about building a society. And no matter what, even if you're starting from square one, a society will contain sort of like edicts that dictate what passes, and that will create inevitably insiders and outsiders. And so it's just a matter of, and we have this conversation all the time as fans of like, how would so-and-so do on another season with a different cast? This is part of the reason why they say so much of Survivor is luck. Sometimes it comes down to even who you're put on a tribe with or who you're put on a season with in general. That could cast the die in favor of or against you winning this game.
I just know if I hadn't eaten in a week and I walked into that challenge and I saw yet another biceps competition, I'd be yelling. I would sit down in the sand and I'd be like, really, Jeff?
Yeah, Jeff would hate to see me coming at a biceps competition.
Oh my God. What did you make of the reward reveal? It was so, and listen, I give credit to Jeff for like really sometimes trying to sell the lemons of rewards, not literally lemons, but sort of like, all right, I'm going to market this to you like it's a Maserati, when actually, it's like a 2014 Saab. It's like, all right, ham and cheese wraps, peach cobbler, crackers. I know you've been craving crackers out there.
I think it's better than Applebee's.
Did they like forget to order crafty that day? Like where did they get that? Ham and cheese wraps doesn't sound appealing.
I think out there though, like you want the protein, like that's all you care about. Like I've heard survivors say like, we didn't want a chocolate cake. We wanted like chicken, like we needed the protein. Like peanut butter is better than like a cake.
I mean, my hot take is, I think it was it might have been the Applebee's season. It might have been Liz's season. Jeff got roasted because he was like, crisp Caesar salad. Yeah. And I was like, if I hadn't had like a cold glass of water in a couple weeks, the idea of eating romaine lettuce, like that would make me salivate.
Sure.
I think he was well within his rights to make that exciting.
Yeah.
Ham and cheese wrap sounds sweaty and limp.
Yeah, I mean, and much like a lot of those guys out there by the end of it. But I think that to your point, is it maybe it's a temperature thing. Maybe it's like what really sells the reward is the coldness of it, especially when you're out there in Fiji, and most of the time it is very sweaty and hot. Like anything refrigerated, I imagine would be enough to sort of get your pulse going.
Like milk.
Like milk. Okay, so Laura's, I mean, not to let's say you're like a, the capital N nutritionist, but like, can you speak to this chocolate milk phenomenon? Because obviously this is confirmed by not one, but 2 castaways this season that they use it for muscle mass.
I mean, I think it's like pretty balanced, like protein, carb, fat wise, especially if you're doing chocolate milk with like some sugar in it. And if you're like trying to bulk up and you're just, part of what you have to fight if you are like trying to put on a lot of body mass is just like at a certain point, your body doesn't want to eat more food. And a sneaky way to do that is to get in liquids instead of like having to eat a meal, because we have a lot of like fail safes in our body of like too much. So you don't notice it if you're just like carrying around a gallon of milk all day, I guess. But how fast are they drinking that before it gets up to room temperature? That's what freaks me out.
Can I just say, milk? Like, if I had half a glass of milk, I'm shitting my pants. Like, what? Do these men not have lactose issues?
I'm pretty sure their colon's just like painted over at this point, like wallpapered over. Like nothing's coming out of there.
I don't understand. I have quite a sensitive stomach. Like I have many allergies, but like milk is the number one. Absolutely not. Do not enter.
Do you know what a bear plug is?
I'm scared.
Like a bear, the animal, when they hibernate for the winter, like all their waste just collects in their lower intestine.
No,
I imagine that's the chocolate milk effect.
That you just ingest enough that it just sort of like accumulates in your body. I mean, that's a hell of a hack for like, some of these challenges where it's like you have to lift up X% of your body weight. Like that'd be a great way to just sort of evacuate the club right before opening night to be like, all right, I don't have to lift up that much anymore. It was all building up there, but now just flush out nice and easy, literally.
Oh my gosh, I just can't believe milk. Like, and not because I think it's gross. Like, I loved milk before it no longer loved me. I just like don't know any like adult person. Like most adult people like can't.
They're not that lactose tolerant.
Yeah, can't drink a gallon of milk every day.
Have you ever like tried to eat a yogurt too fast when you're like leaving the house in the morning? You're like,
yeah,
that's what I imagine.
That's where it is for me. It's the volume. Like, is it just that you're bringing it to a workout instead of because we've seen people at the gym carrying around these like gallons of Poland Spring, right? Like, is it just doing that instead of milk? So it's like, all right, I'll take a swig of this before I hit the triceps. Cause I don't know. That sounds even worse to me.
Yeah. I guess did they say if it was 2% or whole?
I think they said I imagine it was whole milk. I think David said his preference is whole milk.
Mike, when you talk to Joe, eventually you got to ask.
You got to ask all about the milk. The people need to know. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's probably something a lot of people's bodies would prefer rather than just doing like 3 servings of protein powder. It's also probably way more cost effective. So if you can tolerate it, like.
Well, I don't know. But in this economy, honestly, the milk itself might be more expensive than any protein powder you're taking in.
And more dangerous.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit more about David here, the man of the hour and a half. First off, let me just say, I'm in complete agreement with both of you. This was a classic Survivor example of someone that, again, for lack of a better term, you love to hate. And what's interesting as well is that, like, I think a lot of people started the season with him being this kind of refreshing taste, much like a crisp Caesar salad, right? That to your point, Laura, this is a guy who is the most casual Survivor fan out of anyone in the new era, aka anyone from like the past 10 seasons of the show. Someone who is maybe one of the physically biggest people there, but like did not let any of that stop him from just coming in being like, yeah, I'm going to win this. I don't really know the game, but like I'll have the game know me. And so I also really love this episode too, because it felt so old school in that, like I would say we're not in a voting blocks portion of this season right now. And it really is like an alliance and outsiders. And so to actually just spend the hour and a half peeking into this one alliance singularly falling apart. Yes, it unfortunately comes at the cost of like, with the exception of one swim lesson, like basically hearing nothing from the people that are outside of the alliance. I personally, though, was like invigorated by all of these scenes of people trying to talk to each other about, Kyle trying to pit Eva and Joe against David, Shaheen trying the same thing, Eva and Joe going back and forth, David putting his foot in his mouth time after time. I thought it was just, especially after, honestly, the past couple of weeks of pretty straightforward votes, it was really fascinating to me to watch this, like, just slow disintegration of this ironclad majority over the course of an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't believe when they were all sitting on the beach together in daylight, just openly talking about being the best people. So strong.
I think, though, that's like the strong person hubris of it all, right? That's like, well, we are, who can beat us if we're all, sitting here like this? And I think that, like, I loved the swim lesson with Star. I'm so excited to hear from everybody next week. I can't wait to hear what Mitch has cooked up. I'm like ready for him to come and play. I
don't understand how Mitch didn't get on the Strong People's Alliance. Like,
I know, like this guy is arguably one of the better challenge performers. Like, he's a whiz kid at everything
of the season.
Because it's not about strong people.
No.
You know what it's
look,
about.
We're all big.
Yeah.
I will say, though, like, Mitch, again, has this incredible story and is amazing in challenges. I do think, and I say this with love, the more you listen to the actual content of his confessionals, it's like a little Survivor GPT, where, like, his confessionals are either like, I'm on the out, so I hope I win immunity. Oh no, I lost immunity, so I gotta make some big moves to survive. Yeah. Like, it's very interesting that he is saddled with a lot of, like, more expositional content, despite the fact that he's in a very unique position. He was almost voted out this week.
And I do think it's because he hasn't had an opportunity to do anything. This is my hope, because I'm like really rooting for him. I've got my eye on him. I've had my eye on him. And I hope it's because he like really hasn't had the numbers. Like, there's just been no way that they could do anything up until this week now. Like, if they flip Kyle, they're set. So like, I don't know. I think we'll see.
Do you think they just like counted out Mitch a little too early, and then they were like, shit, we didn't get any Mitch confessionals, and then at the end they sat him down and were like, say one good thing, now say one bad thing, now say one thing if what happened is medium, and
and they just kind of like pepper him throughout of like, or take the most neutral statements possible of like, all right, this could apply to basically anything. Throw a Mitch in there somewhere.
I also think that it's just like classic. That's what they do in the DR and Big Brother too, where it's like, tell us for like the basic people who need the Survivor GPT, like what you need to happen tonight.
Now, the exact opposite side is Star, who hasn't gotten much, but what she's gotten is incredible.
I every moment. Star.
Oh yeah.
She is a star. She's amazing. I think like even, we haven't gotten much of her in this early jury phase or like this merge phase, but I do feel like her coming out party is happening next week. I'm pumped for next week.
Well, she had this amazing scene, and I posted about this on social media, where like she just comes like sauntering out of the jungle, holding a coconut, and be like, all right, I don't know what the hell you're all talking about, but I've got an idea. How about we vote Shaheen? And David and Mary just say, no, we're not gonna do that, but here's another idea. She's like, okay, sure, whatever. And listen, I will obviously separate the artist from the art here, that I think that she is giving me not Michael Richard vibes, but very big Kramer vibes, where it's like this very unique offbeat energy, kind of always eating something, just kind of walking into these conversations, be like, all right, I got this big idea. Even her at Tribal Council be like, all right, so what Camilla's saying over here, it's just such like a fun, energetic persona. Again, especially amidst while all of these majority alliance members are like tearing their morality asunder, being like, do I break my word and do I vote David out? Star's over here like laughing up a storm. There's a secret scene where she tries to test Joe and Shaheen by going up to them and being like, who's in your final three? And when they say that they don't know, she's like, that was a test and you failed. Like, she is just an absolute wild card. And to your point, Maggie, I'm hoping that now that the deck is thinning out a little bit, she'll pop to the surface.
Star's running the B plot. And you kind of wish they would all just turn to camera and be like, Star, and then we transition.
Yeah, the Survivor 48 writers room is like, well, shit, we got, X amount of minutes to cover. How about Star gets a job here somewhere? I'm sure Star getting a job anywhere could provide a lot of fun along the way.
They just ask Star to do a puzzle with no risk, no reward.
Well, we saw what happened with that last time. She would be like, all right, everybody, get in here. Family puzzle.
So good.
All right. So as we do every week here on the B&B, Liana and I decided to sit down and write out preseason predictions of how we thought David was going to do. Liana did send me her prediction, and we'll see who is more on the money about the man, the myth, the legend here. So let me go to Liana. Okay. Interesting. Liana, much like some people in this Strong Persons Alliance prior to this episode, had David in her final 3 preseason. So she wrote, Mr. GigaChad himself is not in danger of going home pre-merge due to his challenge strength, despite earning the nickname the Daredevil Dynamo from Charity, which sounds like a comic book name from Big Brother, to your point, Maggie. David never really formed a solid alliance. Instead, he's used as a meat shield by various alliances, and she names a few here out of context: the Storm Chasers, C squared, K squared, which sounds like a scientific formula. This takes him deep into the game, landing him in the final 3 chairs, but unfortunately for him, as a GOAT, not a GOAT. While the Daredevil Dynamo argues his case, he's promptly overlooked for not having any agency and being dragged along by other power players in the game. During the live reunion, David sobs about his loss over a glass of chocolate milk the producer specifically prepared for him. That's yet to be determined, Liana. That could still happen.
Yeah, you never know.
I honestly think there's a very non-zero chance that, instead of the glasses of champagne, Jeff legitimately brings out, all right, frosty glasses of milk. Everybody cheers to the winner, which will be weird because it won't be David, but, the impact will still be felt. Liana said David's ally was his biceps and his enemy was his social relationships.
Hey, nice work, Liana. That's why you're from science,
Exactly. All right. So I did not have as lofty prospects for David. He was flying higher a bit as a wannabe stunt pilot for Liana's predictions here. I had David making the jury. So I wrote, while David sets off the lunkhead alarm initially among his tribe, his immediate reliability as a provider allows him to open up and showcase his 3-dimensional persona to match his 3-dimensional physique. David forms a close alliance early on with Chrissy, as the two bond over being the oldest and hardest workers on their tribe. He also links up a surprising bond with Camilla over their mutual love of PC gaming. She'll realize GigaChad could be even more of an asset than she realizes. David is a star of the challenges, not the person. He somehow contains the strength of a gorilla and the dexterity of a dolphin. When the merge hits, the stuntman tries to evade the natural target on his back with some true tactical rolls. He makes a pitch to Joe and Eva, saying they should work together as the biggest physical players to keep immunity away from these mere mortals. Early in the merge, David's in a tight Siva alliance. He's the creator of the Meet Phalanx side deal. I guess that was my name for this Joe, Eva, David dynamic.
Meet Phalanx.
Yeah, sort of like the 300 shield barrier that they were all the shields come together, right, to form one giant one. So in the midst of that, he wins an immunity challenge and confidently calls his unprecedented streak of necklaces to come. But even though he thinks he's flying high, things quickly nosedive from there. The other 2 tribes see the Sivas as too powerful a coalition and assemble their own slingshot to take out the opposition's Goliath, ironically named David. Following his blindside, the casual audience will make a quick push to get David onto season 50. He'll also become the most successful cast member from his season on Cameo, but he will specifically outline in his intro video that he will refuse to honor any requests that force him to wear sleeves. His biggest ally was Camilla, then the fan base, and his biggest enemy was Joe and Eva.
Well, you were honestly, I would say probably you were a bit more correct, Mike. You saw the fall of David coming. But yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think he was a big presence. I knew that, to Liana's point as well, unless these players really want to just go wackadoo, he would probably make the merge either by not going to tribal council or just surviving due to the fact that they would need him in the challenges. But post-merge is when he would really struggle. And again, to his credit, he tried to get out in front of that by being like, at the merge, let's put something together. It just was a matter of too many things happening at once, including that like wild sudden fallout of the immunity challenge. Like,
I don't know why
My
he
jaw
didn't.
dropped.
Like, what he should have done is come in and be like, yeah, I want to work with you, like strong six, totally, and marry, and then get out star that first vote, like Cedric star, and because then he has his Sivas and he has his strong people, and he can go back and forth. Like, why does he need to focus so much on Camilla? Like, I just think he should have given himself more options. He got like too one-track minded.
that's a perfect way to put it. Is I think once he got to, and Chrissy even told this to me, that like she found a moment when like David was gone, you know, like that he clearly had gotten in bed with Joe and Eva. He put all his milk cartons in that one basket, and so as a result, kind of like left the Sivas behind. When again, I think a lot of other players would, to your point, try to keep those options open. I mean,
Why
that's what
not?
Kyle's doing, right? Kyle's like, I'm not going to ditch my secret number one in favor of the strong alliance. Why can't I have both at this moment?
Yeah, it's very Kim Spradlin. Like, that's how you play that amazing game. Like, why would you be like, screw all of these people, this huge majority of people that I do have relationships with, screw them. I'm all in on the people who like are going to beat me in challenges and in the end, and have an unbreakable bond like Joe and Eva. I
feel like the thing I would have to remind myself all the time if I was out there and my brain was scrambled by not having food is like, other people are not mysteriously bad at the game.
Yep.
So if they're like saying things to you, if they're just like, oh gosh, I don't know, they know.
Yeah.
And you're just not in on it. And I think he was like taking some people at face value when he should have been like, why am I out in front? He's like, I have to chop Shaheen off at the knees. I have to like make sure Kyle doesn't have a secret number two. But why? Like, he could have been his own meat shield, like late into the game, like Jonathan from season 42. Like he could have been so obvious that he never becomes the big threat. You could throw some of those challenges. You could be like, this is the one facet that exists to my whole personality. But he was strategic and he was showing it, and it was just such an easy magnet to get everyone on board.
Yeah, my prediction is if Joe isn't gone this week or next, that Joe is the winner of Survivor 48.
Which is interesting because David had some rather choice words for Joe in his exit press regarding regarding the whole not only the whole you went back on your word thing, but the fact that he feels like Joe went back on his word, which is also, I mean, it's always so intriguing, and I can understand why it might be frustrating for some, but I'm always so incredibly titillated by the people that are like honor, loyalty, integrity, because to watch them kind of massage their words around what that means. And David's a great example where Camilla starts off this episode being like, oh yeah, you say you're playing with honor and loyalty and you're open about everything. Well, you lied to my face that I was not the decoy vote, and you just told me this. So I think that the way he defines it, which is the way a lot of people do when they cop this philosophy, which is like, no, I mean to my alliance. Like, you gotta lie in the game of Survivor, but I would never lie to the people in my core alliance. I think that's largely what is making him feel the way he is, even all these months later. Is like, all right, well, yes, I did lie to these people, but I only did it to help protect the people I actually wanted to protect, who then turned against me.
I stuck to my plan. Yeah. So I didn't lie because I knew what I was doing the whole time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, yes, you can say all of that's true, but like, end of the day, Joe did what David wanted to do better.
Yeah.
Period. And he outplayed him. And like, of course he's going to be upset about that still. Like, David's not the type of person who's going to be like, good game.
Because Joe's got those people skills. You know that they're all looking at Joe and being like, Daddy? Like,
they literally are.
Gaga for Joe.
No, I mean, literally, every single person who wanted to make a move this episode had to approach Joe specifically for it, like, which is wild.
It's very like Tyler Crispin. It's very Boston Rob. You know, it's very like these people who have such like a presence and like they have such control over everybody just by their like leadership ability that everybody's like, okay, yes, let me just check in with my dad first and make sure it's okay before I go over to your house to
And
play.
I do think like David could have done that.
Yes.
Like the first couple episodes, I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, he seems like Jonathan, but with like a shred of emotional intelligence. Like he can ingratiate himself. He knows when to take a back seat. And I think that just wore out a little fast. That battery drained
and that's
fast.
what I'm saying. Like, of course he's going to be bitter against Joe still.
Yeah.
He wants what Joe had.
And he could have won. He could have won. He should have won that challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, that was wild. Like Joe was, and I started showing challenges to my son, Asher. That's the gateway drug, you know, that's the way to get him into Survivors. Like, look at these fun games with all these colors and balls. And so he was watching, and his favorite color is blue. My favorite color is green. So when it came down to Joe versus David, he's like, all right, it's your color versus my color. And then as Joe's ball was slipping, I could see him get so dejected. He was like, oh, I'm going to lose. Look at that ball. And I'm like, you never give up on Survivor. That's why you never do, because for some reason, a guy could have a muscle cramp and step off a box all of a sudden. And Joe, who's teetering on the edge, and just think about, I mean, I would say the sliding doors of what would happen had David not dropped that ball. For all intents and purposes, I think the wind would have been blowing against Mary at that point, that she probably would have gone instead. But still, if David had lasted in the game and lost his number one ally, would have been a very interesting situation next week as well.
I also think, like, you know, David winning immunity, he would have come back like with even being even more assertive because he's safe. He would have like been even more David, I feel. So like, I think that if that was already rubbing people like Joe and Eva, well, not Eva. Eva was never.
She's bridging the gap. She wants to be everyone's friend.
I have to say though, the biggest loser of this move against David is Eva, in my opinion. I think this exposes her in a way that she doesn't see or understand right now. And I know she didn't want to do it, but I think like if David stays, if they do get to the 6 with the strong 6, she has an idol. She has her safety without power. Like she basically, like she's Joe's number one. Like she's in the final 3. But I think this is really exposing for her. I think that this vote, like she could be the vote, you know?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that, you know, there's a lot of weighing back and forth as to whether or not this was the right move for Joe and Eva in particular. I could see a way next week where it really does feel like, okay, this was sort of like the squeaky wheel. Now we can drive forward. Like we didn't have problems with each other. The only problem we had was with David. And yes, it does lose Mary in the process, but like now we feel really good as a 4. Hell, maybe Kyle's like, hey, you know who'd be really good right now? Camilla. Can we bring her in again? Can we do a little bit of a mulligan on our 5th wheel here? So I think those are
Mike, but then you put Shaheen in such a power position. Then you're giving up all of your agency if you're Kyle in that position, putting Shaheen in the power position where he's between those 2 pairs. I don't know. I don't know that I would recommend that. I don't know that that's the way I would be thinking.
But I do think that for Eva, the other point of it is what you're mentioning, and for Joe as well, to a certain extent, that like for many reasons, David was a shield to them.
Yeah.
So the physical variety of like, okay, now there's 3 different challenge people we can target. Now they're only down to really 2 from physicality perspective.
And I think it will be interesting to see where the group consensus lands with who kind of takes ownership of the David move, because everyone was kind of on the same page theoretically, but you have Joe, Kyle, and Shaheen, who are more strategic forces, who are kind of letting David be like the battering ram of keeping the alliance together. So who steps up into the like leadership role, and who's the most active, and then we try to gut them by taking their number 2 away, or do then we have everyone decides Shaheen's evil all of a sudden and ruining everyone's game and just the magnets there.
I don't know. I'm also wondering like, okay, say like this is the whole layout of next week now with David gone. I'm like, would I, if I was in the game, actually have pushed to get rid of Mary? Because Mary, you still piss off Dave, but Dave is still a huge meat shield for you. People are still going to go after Dave. Like nobody's going to go after Mary.
I feel like, I mean, I know this is a very different situation, but didn't it play out last season that Rachel was immune from like final 8?
Yeah.
I feel like the first time David loses immunity, you just have to.
You're right. I forgot about that.
There's no...
That's the thing. I mean, I don't know, to your point, Maggie, how many more bicep curling challenges we're going to get. But like the fact of the matter is, he is a much better challenge performer. And so there's also a chance of like, they're probably, I mean, you saw Shaheen stand up out of his seat. Granted, as unconscious as they may have been, that also might have been a signal of like, oh shit, this is one of the rare opportune moments where like, we actually got him a little flat-footed at this point. I do agree that I think if you get rid of Mary, that eliminates someone who could probably be a little bit more wily. You know, we'll see next week. She's clearly trying to scrounge something together now against the other people that were in her alliance. But at the same time, I think there was so much of a presence that David was occupying that sometimes, I mean, David talked everyone's ears off about why isn't it an easy vote? It should be an easy vote. Sometimes that is the easiest vote, is like, who is someone that everyone could get on the same page about getting rid of? And we saw it was basically an open and shut case, 6-3 vote, which is still the most disparate vote of the post-merge. But regardless, when you have Mitch independently pitching David at the picnic, you're like, this is mutually aligned interest that still disguises our alliance while also simultaneously being able to credit a scalp on our resume.
Yeah. And the people who are in that strong six who are kind of using the bluff of like, this is just about being big to get to play like a decent strategic game. They get to sort of, you get this group consensus vote. And then in that like meta conversation that's happening about, oh, are people just allowed to, push their way through to the end on physical merit, or are we allowed to be sneaky and value that more in players? Now you've kind of weeded out the outliers and everyone's got a more similar game of like, well, we're gonna say like, I want to be a strong player and win, but also everyone's operating on a similar plane. Whereas like David stonewalling every conversation was really exposing people. It was forcing conversations that in another season probably wouldn't have happened, which was more dangerous for the more strategic.
Right. I mean, again, imagine if you're like Kyle and Camilla and David's coming in being like, oh yeah, you two are close, right? That's the reason why you did it. Like, I would certainly not want somebody approaching me with those facts in broad daylight.
I think maybe I was thinking from Eva's perspective, because I was saying like she was the biggest loser of this vote, but like even more than Mary, in my opinion. I think that Eva, this is like not good for her.
I think I'm confused, but I don't totally know why you think it's not, or because it feels neutral for her to me.
I think that it's we're at 4-4.
Okay.
So it's Mary, Star, Mitch, Camilla.
So the most obvious duo.
Yeah. And then like all Kyle has to do is vote out Eva
like
or Joe.
None of them are threatened by Eva.
I mean, the problem is Eva does have a public idol. So like, it's also another thing where it's like, we could get her to flush it, but that's oftentimes tough to do because it's like, then when you're guaranteed to come back the next round, like, how do we try to navigate that?
And if you're 4-4 and you're probably already splitting votes, and if you miss the shot on Eva and then you come back with angry Eva and a ravenous Joe. That's really
ravenous
scary.
Joe sounds like the name of a ska band.
But that's what I'm saying. Like you don't miss that shot then. And you like, if I think that if you are one of those four and you're getting Kyle to flip, he's not voting out Shaheen there. He's voting out either Joe or Eva.
True, though. I don't know. It seems like Kyle really has like a good thing going on with Joe. I mean, granted, he did sort of utilize some of his personal information to like get Joe on his side to maybe pitch David. I see your point, Maggie, in that biggest loser is not necessarily like who's on the bottom of the power rankings. It's more so who fell the most. And I agree with that. Yeah.
I think I'm maybe thinking of this like Big Brother stock watch wise. Like Eva was her positioning was so strong there, and now her positioning is like very open to getting voted out literally at the next vote. And she has a public idol, and everybody, all of those people know that she has safety without power.
Which I love as well, that she's like, all right, what if I got this thing now that nobody knows about? This is exciting. Proceeds to then, pyramid scheme style, tell two people who then tell two other people. And now basically everybody knows about it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I agree with you that probably the smart thing for people to do would be go for Eva now before they get a little farther, and a 2-person voting block is really dangerous. I think it'll be interesting to see where Mary falls. Like, does she get scooped up by somebody? Does the other side consolidate power at all, or do they just kind of go limp?
Yeah. Yeah, and also, I don't know why I like forgot how good David is at challenges. I was like, but then, of course, David is like,
I just think because there have been if they did not go for David now, we would be sitting here screaming,
Yeah.
why didn't you
Yeah.
do that
Totally.
every week after every week after every
Totally.
week? And if they start eating each other, that's how David gets to the end and goes, you missed your one chance. You
Yep.
should have come for me.
Mhm.
Gives the speech that Sam was trying to give at the end of last season, being like, I was the threat, and it works.
Mhm.
Right?
Well,
Yeah.
listen, while we're on the subject of challenges, of course, it really is the stars are aligning, to your point about fate casting its hand in Survivor, in that not only did we get rid of, a fantastic challenge performer, we have an out-and-out fitness, bona fide expert on the podcast. So listen, we're at a point in Survivor right now where maybe there's some familiar faces getting ready for 50. There might even be some people in the cards right now, 51, 52 down the line, but it is never too early to start preparing. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And so what I thought we might be able to do while we have the in-house expertise is that for this game this week, I'm going to be providing a list of Survivor challenges, whether Jeff calls them classics or kind of a classic, I think is what he called the one this week, which is like a little odd. I'm not sure how you measure that in degrees, but basically what we're going to try to have you do, and we'll make this a brain trust as well, as a think tank, is we'll provide a challenge and talk through what are some ways that you could prepare for it. What muscles should you work on? Are there everyday objects you can utilize as well in lieu of not having the Survivor prop and challenge department around you?
People literally on Survivor 51 are going to cite this podcast and be like, I heard a Mike Bloom podcast about how we needed to work on this muscle.
Yeah, listen, I mean,
grip strength. It's grip strength. Every challenge. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. It's all, well, listen, you talk about grip strength. Let's start with a challenge that might be all about that. First one up is last week's out-and-out classic, Get a Grip. And just as a brief introduction here, for those that don't remember the names or aren't watching the video right now, this is the one from last week. This is the hold on to the pole for dear life, grabbing onto apparently increasingly smaller footholds and handholds, depending on the season that you're in. So, Laura, for all we know, this could be like the width of a quarter, the footholds and handholds next season.
I mean, I think for every Survivor challenge, and I am, I know my stuff, but I'm talking out my ass a little bit here because I'm sure there's all kinds of Survivor factors that I can't consider. But I think training barefoot, honestly, would be huge. We get so much feedback from our feet. And when we're in sneakers, we just don't get that. So literally just like walking barefoot, uneven surfaces are so good for your feet. For a lot of people, that's uncomfortable. But that's something I would recommend, letting your toes spread. Like there's so much toe stuff and foot stuff.
Whoa.
Especially after the show, if you know how to make a good buck.
Heyo.
There you go. I think with this one, my sneaking suspicion with the Get a Grip challenge, with holding onto the poles, because I think this is one of the ones where people are like, oh, it's usually like a smaller person wins it. Like this is not a traditional comp beast challenge. This is one for the Parvati's of the world. My sneaking suspicion is that the trickiest part of this is, or the reason why sometimes women are more equipped, is the Q angle in your hips. Because I think when these big guys get on the pole and they're trying to squeeze with their inner thighs, that tuckers you out real fast. But anyone who can rotate their hips out and wrap their legs around like crisscross applesauce style, because if you are tensing your muscle at max capacity, you're going to lose that. But if you can have sort of like a loose grip on it and really hang on the pole, I really think somebody's ability to externally rotate their hips plays big here. Because then you're not just like, you're not holding the pole as tight as you can. You're kind of like sitting off of it.
Wow.
Can I just say, we're only one challenge in. This is worth the price of admission.
This is the only one I have a theory about. This is the only one I have a theory about.
I literally was like, I'm texting Sam and saying they need to cut the 20 minutes of this video and make it a separate video about how to train for Survivor challenges.
No, but like, I don't even know what cast this is, but look who looks
Russell up there,
here.
so I think it's 19.
Or no, I think this is I think it's Cook Islands, because there's Ozzy in his it's tough to see in the camo.
It's Penner's hat. It's Penner.
Yes.
That's Penner.
Okay, is Ozzy the one like scrunched?
Yeah, that's him.
Like, I think that's the best strategy, or the person at the end who's like standing up tall.
But the footholds aren't there anymore to stand up tall.
Yeah, so that's
the thing, is that these ones are convex, right? They were like little ropes to stand on. Now it's become literally concave, which are like these little things to try to grip onto.
Yeah, but if you can get your legs around it and be sort of pushing into the pole and not down onto the pole.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
and that's what we saw with Eva and Mary. They were doing that. Exactly.
Yeah, that's why Eva and Mary were both like kind of hanging off, really like sitting tight instead. And like David was like thigh mastering it, like squeezing it. Like that's never gonna last.
Oh my goodness.
All right. Well, listen, we're off to a hot start right now. Well, let's move a little more down to the ground, but we're still looking up here. So this is one that we haven't seen in a while, but still sometimes gets brought about. This is called Keep on Your Toes.
Horrible.
And so how this works is that you have to stand on a balance beam, and basically it's measured for height, where you have to essentially stand on your tiptoes to keep a block balance between your head and the upper beam. I mean, Laura, is this calves? Is this core? Is it all the above?
It's everything. I mean, all of these are just torture techniques, right? Like, I think what's tricky about this is that you're in a much stronger position if you are either all the way up on your tiptoes, like imagine a ballerina on demi-pointe, like all the way up, heels all the way up, or all the way down. In the middle is way harder because you're not like locked out at the end of your range of motion. You can try this for yourself. Try this at home. Like if you stand on one leg on your tiptoes, if you go up as far as you can, it's going to be easier to balance than if you're like in the middle, because you start to waver a little bit. So you can see how they've set the height for everybody. They can't be on like a flat foot, but they also can't really like push down through the balls of their feet and like extend and tense.
I have a question. You can see the person all the way on the right. That's Trish, right?
Yeah.
This is So Trish kind of has her head in the air. Like, is it a better strategy to go as high up on your toes as possible and kind of like angle your back out a little bit to kind of like give yourself a more concave like this, rather than like standing up straight and not flexing or not going all the way up?
I mean, it's tough because I think with a lot of these, the more variety you have in your positioning, the better. And it's just you're betting on everyone else and how long everyone else is going to last.
Sure.
Like, Trish might be more secure in this moment, but like Woo looks comfier.
Yeah,
he
does.
If you can like readjust a little bit, you can like the neck cramping is going to get her before the wobbles do. Like you think of balance as like standing still and frozen, and balance is actually like really rapidly and subtly reacting to what's happening to you, right? So if you freeze, you're messing with your ability to be adaptable, just like in the social game.
Look at this.
This is incredible. All right, let's keep going. Let's make it 3 for 3 here. So this is one that's called overextended. This is basically known as like the boom mic challenge, where, well, we'll talk about a variation of this later on, but you have to basically hold a pole above your shoulders. Most people balance it on their head, like we're seeing this picture of Survivor 44, but you have to like balance a pole, and at the end of it is a ball or a totem that you have to keep underneath it. So let's talk a little bit of upper body here. We've been talking a lot of lower body. What's the way to approach this from like a shoulder, trapezius perspective?
I will say, something that makes this really hard upper body wise is that if you're holding that pole horizontally over your head, most people don't have a full 180 degree range of motion in their shoulders. Most people are going to be a little comfier with their elbows in front of their shoulders. If you want to get nerdy, we call that the scapular plane, right? So if we're like pushing or pulling overhead, we're using more of a neutral grip, quote unquote, versus being so out open like that. For a lot of people, that's going to throw you off your center of gravity because you just don't have the mobility. So having that bar, like if someone had limited shoulder mobility, I'm not going to have them overhead press a barbell. They're going to overhead press 2 dumbbells so that their shoulders can do what they need to do. But when you have to freeze open like that, and a lot of these, like what's the one? I forget what season it was.
Where they had the clay pot that they had to like go over.
The one where they like push out like this.
Yeah. That I didn't put that one in there. I think it's called like comfortably numb, where you have to hold on to the 2 discs with the pots on them.
Like being open like that is just not comfortable for most of us. Most of us are kind of in our, desk goblin position. So
they're casting too many white collar nerds on Survivor. They keep me scapular.
I think like it's hard to say because I imagine that ball is very light, which makes it harder. I would kind of like push down on the top of my head, get a little bit of tension going that way, right? Like pull down, pull the big long stick down onto my head, so I had a little bit more control versus like, I think that could be easier.
It looks like they do have it on their heads.
It's resting on their heads.
Yeah.
But like, I think if you
are
like,
pulling and then you can
I want to like stand up and demonstrate. I'm like, if you bend your knees a little bit so you can like get your pelvis under you and you pull down onto your head so you can push up, you might just have like a little more control.
Oh, that, yeah, sort of like counteract the forces. That pull down, push up.
And I mean, again, I'm really pulling this out of my ass. I
love this though. This is gold.
I'm also thinking with the feet. You think about like the triangle is the most stable shape. I would definitely go for sort of a warrior one situation. Like, again, I don't know which cast this is, but
this is 44. Yeah.
Toes of one foot pointed forward, and then the other foot you position perpendicular. So you're in kind of like a fencing stance. I think that's going to give you a better chance at catching yourself if you do get thrown off versus like toes pointing in the same direction, then you're weeble wobbling back and forth.
Yeah. And I think the one you're looking at actually is Brandon, who I believe did win this challenge for his group. So,
oh my goodness.
I think the feet are always going to be more important than the feet are the base of everything. So that's always more important than you want to give it credit for. The ball's just a distraction.
Well, as they often are. Well, you talk about the triangle being the strongest shape. Let's talk about
Mike. We went full bloom. We did
there
it.
We go. It took us an hour or change. Usually it takes a little bit longer than that, but better late than never. Let's talk about, it's been known as Bermuda triangles in the past. I think Survivor Wiki officially calls it sea legs, but this is, I call it the doghouse challenge, where it looks like the top of a doghouse. You are standing out in the middle of the water and you are trying to essentially balance on top of it with only really being able to rely on these, again, increasingly smaller footholds. And this is a tough one because we saw like 42, for example, the waters were raging. It was over in like 5 minutes. 46, completely calm waters. It was over in like 5 hours. Is there, do you think, a consistent method to, no matter what the conditions are, trying to remain on top of this thing as long as possible?
I think it's always going to be bend your knees a little bit. Like, for the love of God, do not lock your knees. Bend your knees, sit your hips back a little bit, like a hinge, if you know what that is. Like, lower your center of gravity and give yourself room to move wherever you need to go. So you can just like absorb the force of the ocean. Because if you start to clench and lock this out, like you're squeezing your inner thighs together. That is not a strong position for anybody. And you're also like, if you're holding onto those little rails, is that inversion or eversion, like you're twisting your ankle to make it happen. So like the more you can kind of sit into this and like you're riding a mechanical bull, like make it active, not just set yourself on top of it and respond to what's happening, but actually be like,
move with it.
I'm riding the pyramid here.
Okay.
Like, it's the thing I'm talking a big game right now. Like, how do you fall off of this thing? Like, if I got a splinter, I'd be out. I'd be like, medevac me. I don't want to do this anymore. So I always look at this and I'm like, how does someone not just pitch forward and knock out a tooth or something? But
I know.
I think like get low, start off with as many bent joints as you can. So you can tense up and hold yourself, but you can also absorb the shock of like impact if a wave comes and knocks everyone over.
Wow.
I'm always intrigued when it comes to various balance elements in this show. And I guess this is an example of that, but obviously there's like balance beams, teeter-totters, etc. Is there a hard and fast way to do it? Do you look forward? Do you look down? Arms out, arms not out? Is there a tried and true method for it?
Most people are comfier with something different. And that's what's tricky about something like this is probably a lower center of gravity and less upper body mass would help you out here. But if you've got someone who's just stronger than everybody else, that might not matter that much. Like a lot of people will have an easier time balancing if you look at a point in the middle distance and you can like lock your eyes on that. But for some people, that's going to mess with them. For some people, that will take them out of concentration, and that might be worse, especially if you're not operating with like max mental capacity. Like your proprioception is going to go to shit. This is how people get injured, right? In
what
the gym.
What does proprioception mean?
Proprioception is just like your body's awareness of where you are in space and what's happening to it. Like all the input you're taking.
I have a low level of proprioception.
I have no comment.
Neither confirm nor deny.
I feel like it's important. We've been best friends for 10 years. I can say that. You know, so like something like this, I don't know how helpful it would be to look off into the distance, because the distance is the ocean. And if you put her on one of these things, she's vomiting in 10 minutes.
That's
I
valid.
didn't even think about that, but you're right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all of these things, when they're like trying to do a balance beam and it's floating on water, like I think agility and reactivity is a more important part of balance than, like, people always say, oh, do lots of yoga for your balance. And that could be useful, but also training, like doing ladder drills, playing like Dance Dance Revolution, like all the like fast feet things that we think of with like football players. If you can like have to react and catch things, like that's going to help you figure out how to
correct when you start to go off balance.
Like actively balance, decelerate yourself, hit a point and stick it when you're responding to a force, rather than just like, I'm going to stand here in tree pose and lock and load everything and learn how to balance myself. Like you could stand there straight and tall, and then if I, it might not do you any good. So.
Wow, here you go. Future Survivor contestants, hit the arcade, get into DDR. If they're still around, it'll help you in this type of thing. All right, let's move into another version of sort of overextended, but I've kind of lumped a few of these together. So this is when it rains, it pours. This is the one where you have the hand tied to the bucket. But there's also like, I think there's, this one's maybe uncomfortably numb, where you're holding onto the handles above your head with like Natalie and Reed like into the split. There's also the one where you're holding the ball up against the post. Any of these challenges, Laura, when it comes to holding something above your head, is there a good tactic here, especially in when it rains, it pours, when, again, it's not like a static thing you're holding on to. It's more so reacting to when you move your arm.
I mean, I'm picturing Parvati just literally with like her elbow locked out. And I think I'm going to contradict everything I've said and say like, you need to lock and sack your joints and like dissociate. That seems like the only way to get through this, right? Like I feel like it's when people lose mental focus that they then sway and they pull it. So whatever you need to do, but, let's see, what would be something to note? Say, again, if you're doing like an overhead press, like pressing a dumbbell overhead, the top of that movement is not the hardest part. It's actually when you're halfway up, when like the most gravity is working on you. So if you let that arm bend, you're kind of having to fight to keep it up in the air, because you are like actively holding it up, versus like locking it out, letting it go numb. I don't know if I could do that, but I think that's a better.
Yeah, I don't know how safe
tactic.
that is.
Yeah,
but...
and I mean, if you can hold it, like if you are comfortable in that position, holding your arm over your head and literally just freeze and don't think about anything, I really think this one's mostly a mental game.
Can you, because we see, this is from One World, and you see like Chelsea, I believe, or maybe that's Kim on the right-hand side. She's using like her other arm to kind of support it. Does that help at all? Can you use your free moving arm for it?
I mean, then she's pulling on the arm that's up. So that arm doesn't really have to do any work. It's now like a prop for you, versus coach is lifting his arm. That is going to...
Troy's in.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
Two sides of the same coin.
It looks like coach. Right?
It does. It does. Yes,
okay.
Definitely.
Actively holding your arm up is going to be nearly impossible. So yeah, like making a little brace for yourself where you can resist the other arm, pull down on it actively, like pulling down on resistance that's not moving is going to let your other arm be the resistance that's not moving, and also is easier than like half-heartedly lifting something up. It's like what we talked about with the calf raises. Like the bottom and the top, you can do that. You can just go smooth brain and let that happen to you if you have the endurance to do it. Halfway in the middle is like everything's working, whether it's just your arm, whether you realize it or not.
There you go. Be the resistance you wish to see in the world.
Yeah, I think the lockout is the method.
All right, so this is one that's only been used a couple times, but this, when I was coming up with this idea, stuck in my head rent-free of like, this is something I need to get Laura's opinion on, because it's a part of the body that often, I would imagine, is not part of your typical regimen. But a couple times, we've gone to the feet.
Oh, yes. I was hopeful you would bring this one up.
So this particular challenge, the game is afoot. We've used it a couple times. This is the San Juan del Sur version, where essentially you could only do the challenge using your feet. And this one, I think they had to like untie a bundle of logs or like cylinders and stack them on a platform. Is there a way to train your feet for Survivor to operate much like the simians were back in the early days of humanity?
I mean, you do this. Like, you train for the sport that you want to excel at. If you need to get better at foot stuff, you got to be doing foot stuff. And I will say, like,
Heyo.
like what we talked about, being barefoot, like introducing the bottom of your foot to as many variable stimuli as possible. Like, just if you have a backyard or a safe place to walk barefoot, do that. Walking on ground that has variation and isn't just, linoleum or pavement, that's helping your foot be more active in supporting you, which is good for balance, strength, good movement, all of that stuff. But, if you're trying to like grasp and untie with your toes, like, you got to be doing stuff with your toes.
Yeah.
I mean, one that maybe would be easy to set up at home, this is an old ballerina trick, is just get like a towel that you don't care about, like a hand towel. Just put it under your feet, and while you're watching TV, just curl your toes in all 10 at the same time until you've like dragged the entire towel towards you. And then you can even push it out. Because what's in our, everything on the body kind of looks like something else on the body.
Mm-hmm.
Like, your finger has flexors and extensors, just like your bicep and your tricep. And your toe is the same way. But we're usually not using them because our feet are crammed into shoes all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So
I also have a question for you about like the lower, like your pelvic floor doing this, and like your lower abs.
You're doing like a V-sit.
Yeah, because that's what you have to do. I remember Ricard won on 41, and Ricard is like a dancer, so that helped him. But I feel like a big part of that, the way like Baylor is sitting, like that's Baylor, right?
Yeah.
The way Baylor is like untying, like she's in a V-sit, and she, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're
Like,
definitely
lean back.
dealing with like, you're dealing with top range of motion, hip flexor strength, right? A lot of people, because we sit in chairs all day, we think, my hips are really tight, but they're tight because they're weak, because we're not using them. Muscles like to be stretched and strengthened at the same time. We want the tissue itself to be trained, right? So an easy way to train for this, that's not just like doing a bunch of core stuff, doing Pilates and holding a V-sit, because you need to be able to be mobile there, and you can hold on with your upper body. You could sit in a chair and just see how far, here, do this with me. How far can you pick one of your knees up without letting it slump you over? Sit up tall, pick your knee up. We're both doing it under the desk.
I'm doing it as well.
And put it down. Yeah. And then if you get good at that.
I did better than I thought I would, actually.
I'm impressed. Yeah, it's that Pilates. And then when you get the good at that one, that doesn't feel like, okay, do 10, hold it for a second at the top, put it down, do 2 rounds of that on each side. And then once that gets too easy, then you stand up and you put your foot up on the chair and you pick it up from there, because now your other hip is in an extended position. So I think having that mobility at the top of your range of hip flexion would actually be more important than being able to like hold a V-sit, because again, like, you're doing an isometric holding your core past a certain amount of time, that's not going to be useful to you. But having that strength in your hips will be, because you can slump, right? Like, you don't need to be, if we slump all the time when we're doing core stuff, we're not going to be super comfy after a long period of time. But if you can slump, slumping is advantageous.
Yeah.
So you don't need to have like perfect form. Get your hips up. That's what I'd say. And do stuff with your toes.
There you go. Get your hips up and do stuff with your toes. Life advice from
Heyo.
Lauren Girard. All right. So now these are some of the more weather challenges. I pulled into, the box of tricks from Survivor Challenges past and really test you, Laura, to see if we can come up with some ways to train this. Listen, Survivor 50, we don't know what immunity challenges they're going to use. I want to start with a classic here. Hands on a hard idol. So this is the final immunity challenge that's been used a few times. I just went with like the regular Costco
I mean, the
version.
problem is that the ideal gameplay for this is just quit, right?
Yeah, just pull the Richard Hatch, just sit there and eat oranges. I mean, when it is something as sedentary as this, is there a way that you should be like training your body for standing and keeping your hand in one, again, it's not like extended range of motion, but in one very specific position forever?
I mean, no, like this is kind of like running a marathon, where it's like the weeks before you run or like the few days before you run a marathon, you don't do running because you're leading up to doing something like inhumane to your body. There's no reason to be doing this. So there's no reason you should be training for this. So honestly, like, whatever you can do to keep that mental focus, like training staying in something physically when you are uncomfortable, because I feel like the reason people usually lose this one is like they pick up their foot, they just forget. So again, like keeping a little bit of activity going on in your body, bending your knees, like sitting down into your hips, bending your elbow, like reminding yourself that, okay, I'm pressing down into my feet and I'm pressing down into my hand. These are my 3 points of contact. Other than that, it's free game, because people just start standing there and then they like scratch their nose or something. And that's when they get out of it. You know, focus in on your breath if you have to, like do whatever it takes to zone in. And I'd say like, now I'm getting into my more like flighty stuff, but create some movement so you keep your body and your brain active, and so you don't forget where you are and what you're doing.
I love that. Let's go from an old school challenge to more of a new school one. And actually, I was watching the promo for next week. We actually might see this challenge in next week's episode. Let's talk about this one. This is called Slither Me Timbers. This is the one where they basically bind your hands and your feet, and you have to wriggle like a worm through the sand to push the ball. I cannot even imagine what body parts this type of challenge is working.
This one feels like a humiliation ritual.
Yeah.
Sometimes when they get those slow-mo shots of people like biting mud, I'm like, we didn't need that.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, this is one of those things like, how the hell are you going to train for this? What?
I mean, listen, if you have the right partner, you've been training for this for years in a manner of speaking, depending on what you're into.
Hands and feet tied?
And
judge
wiggling around like a worm?
I don't judge. That's what I've been saying. Every pot for a lid. Every ham for a cheese wrap.
Yikes. I'm trying to even remember like what this looks like. I feel like because this is a new one, we haven't seen some like fully game the system yet. And there's probably like a secret sneaky thing that does work. Like, I think, didn't someone tuck the ball into their shoulder and kind of like go shoulder?
Yeah, so that's what Kyle did last year. He like actually inched it up, because they go over and under a bunch of hills, which is like the big thing where a lot of people got torn up. So I think Kyle actually, instead of like nudging the ball up with his head, put the shoulder on like a natural resting area and nudged it up that way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking like if you can like circle your shoulders forward and back, like there's a hip mobility move I love where you're literally just sitting on the ground and you walk with your butt cheeks. Like you just move forward and then back and back, basically is what it looks like. So if you can approach this at an angle, so you're going like one shoulder reaches forward and then the other one catches up and then forward. And instead of trying to like butterfly it, you know what I mean? Like that's the hardest move in swimming, right? Now I'm really talking about things I don't know, but like imagine trying to like buck your whole body up and flip it over. Like that's going to be way more tiring than being able to like take a step. So like, I guess don't be afraid of the asymmetry here, because otherwise you're just doing a handless worm on sand. Walking on sand is terrible. Walking on sand would probably be a good way to train for everything. That's what we get.
It makes a lot. Yeah, that's how you deal with like imbalance of terrain. That's how you deal with endurance as well, because it's harder to walk and run through sand than on land.
Yeah, walk in water. Like they have to swim like 10 feet now. Like you don't need to bother with that. Just like try to get out of the water real fast
with all your clothes on.
Yeah, with jeans on.
Yeah, have someone throw you into a lake with your jeans on and make your way back.
With your hands and feet tied together.
Exactly.
Heyo.
Don't tempt me with a good time. All right, let me provide a last one here. So this is another Survivor classic. This is Samotion.
Woo!
Fun.
So how could you possibly train for this? Because this is another one, to your point, Laura, about like really keeping focus. But considering, again, maybe this is like a half slither, right? Because your one hand is tied behind your back. Do you have to just like train one dominant arm over the other one to handle these types of dexterous tasks?
I guess. I think this is another one where focus dropping is going to be the thing that takes you out. It is.
I have an opinion.
Oh, please.
I am a big fan of the time management style games, the phone games. That's what Laura.
We have exactly opposite taste in brainless phone games. Maggie, my taste is that I have like a puzzle game where it doesn't say any words or numbers. It's just colors. And I put the colors in order. And it's so soothing to me. It's like Cocoa Melon for adults. And Maggie likes games that make her as stressed out as possible. I don't know what it is.
For like 2 minutes and then it's over.
It's because you got a healthy relationship with your parents. So she's like micro-dosing like anxiety in that way.
It makes your heart going a little bit. Makes you live a little.
Yeah, she loves it.
But I like the time management style games where you're juggling a bunch of different things all at once. Like you have to you're like something like Diner Dash, where it's like you have to seat the people, and you also have like table 3 is doing whatever. Like you're doing a bunch of different things all at once, so you have to keep track of. And this is cooking, and I have to make sure this doesn't burn, whatever. And I feel like that's what Motion is. It's like you need to be able to track where this ball is so that you can time it perfectly. Less about like mobility and more about like, can my brain be in 7 different places at once, keeping track of everything at the same time?
Yeah, I would argue this is not physically too taxing, other than the fact that it's tricky. I mean, I guess I'm sure it's exhausting, but I would actually say you could do some like practice sight singing quizzes online, because these things are very controlled and the balls always travel at the same speed. It's why I assume they've been adding those like tricky catches where, you have to wait for the ball to come back down. You can't do anything to make it faster. I think once you got the rhythm of it, like, can you hold a pace? Can you clap through a rhythm and not drop it?
That's such a big
that's so interesting. So you could be like, listen, you could argue some of the worst performers at Motion were maybe some of the worst singers that we've had on Survivor by comparison.
It's a natural human tendency that like when we start like singing in a group or something, everybody speeds up. You go faster and faster and faster. And that's not going to happen here, because the physics of the ball on the track is not going to change. So it's like, do you have the patience to like find an internal rhythm and just stay with it, just the repetitive motion, and you're not going to change it, and you're not going to let the anxiety take over. So yeah, probably like, I'm like, maybe do some more like real true HIIT cardio and practice like heart rate variability and try to maintain a focus. Like, do your 20-second hit interval and then like get off and do a Sudoku puzzle while your heart's coming back down.
Oh my God.
And also like go online and do like the clapping quizzes for sight singing class.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, it's like back during COVID, right? When it was like, you need 30 seconds to wash your hands, sing happy birthday to yourself 2 times. Like, I wonder if you time out, obviously you don't know unless you're like a super duper duper fan to time out how long it takes from the ball to get to the top to the bottom. But if you were somehow able to do so and have it fit to like a piece of music, just have that play in your head.
Like in The Office when they're learning CPR.
Yes, staying alive.
And that's, easier said than done when the wind is in one ear and Jeff is screaming in the other. Like the last thing I would be is focused on like, how many BPM do I think this ball is rolling at? But I think it could be useful because I think that's a consistent pace. So if you could just figure out what that pace is and not overthink it, I think that's like the biggest trick for this one. I don't think it's that physical at all.
Well, congratulations, you two. I think we just hacked Survivor. I think
we're ready.
Listen, our checks are in the mail for any future winners out there who listen to this incredible advice. Holy shit.
Yes. And the thing is, I'm gonna like, don't get embarrassed, but like she has this whole series on her TikTok of like movements you can do sitting in an office chair, things that are super accessible to you so that you can train for some of the things that she was talking about, even like the exercise she was talking about, like sitting in the chair, your hip mobility, like listen to the things that she's saying. And she has all of these series that are really easy for people to pick up at home and do for 20 minutes a day, etc. Say you're working a desk job and you're in final callbacks for Survivor, you can still be training. You don't have to hit the gym as hard as you think you do.
I paid her to say all of that.
There we go.
Yeah, I think like if I could distill this down to one thing that will be useful for Survivor or life. So many of us are focused on like bigger, better, faster, stronger at the gym. And what a lot of us actually need to be focused on is the use it or lose it mentality. Like, can you get up and down off the ground without using your hands?
Hey, that worked in that snake challenge.
There you go. Like the things that you want to be able to do, like sit on the ground with your kids or like get up off the toilet without assistance when you're 90. That's the kind of stuff that like, are you getting down on the floor every day? Can you touch your toes? That's way more accessible for people than like, can you hold your hand up in the air for 8 hours or like, can you squat 800 pounds. So
there we go. Baby steps, whether through water, sand, or just in your day to day. Well, we always finish things off with a chance to shine a light on a charity or cause that is important to our guests. And listen, double the guests means double the charities. I will give you each an opportunity if you would like to highlight a charity or cause for the listeners out there. Maggie, let's start with you.
Sure. Yeah. I always talk about Planned Parenthood when I'm on the podcast, especially, women's abortion rights are being stripped from them in many of the states in our country right now. Planned Parenthood does the really important and accessible work to make women's healthcare accessible to everyone. So please support them if you can. We need to remember that women's healthcare is so much more than just abortion rights, but that is also incredibly important as well. And Planned Parenthood does all of those things.
Very well said. Laura, what would you like to highlight for the listeners?
I'd like to highlight the World Central Kitchen. They're doing amazing work on the ground in Gaza and in emergency zones all around the world, and they really, really need support and funding.
Yeah, listen, we're talking about a show where, yes, we're lampooning ham and cheese wraps and crackers for lunch, but the fact of the matter is there are people out there, especially in incredibly dire situations, who would be in heaven if they had that access available to them. And luckily, Jose Andres and company have the ability to do so. So thank you so much. Thank you, Maggie, as well, for highlighting such a great charity. And check that out, people. And thank you both so much. This was such a fantastic time. We got to
lovely.
We got to send off one of the biggest characters of the season. We talked milk. We literally milked that conversation for all it's worth. We may or may not have given some incredibly salient advice to future Survivor contestants. Like, this was a jam-packed, much like a bear in hibernation, to your point, Laura. Our colons are jam-packed with information from this.
Why did I bring that up? How horrible.
Okay, I literally said I would shit my pants. So,
The B&B spirit officially is through you.
Yeah.
So let's unfortunately have to say adieu to this week and this podcast. But of course, both of you are out there on the internet talking about anything and everything under the sun. So we'll finish with a good old-fashioned round of plugs. Maggie, we'll start with you. What do you want to plug for the listeners out there?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, Threads at MLMorgan_. I'm on Blue Sky, I think just as like ML Morgan. I covered the newest season of Temptation Island on Netflix with Kirsten McInnes. You can still watch that. It was crazy. We covered it all over on the Hot Dummies on Islands feed. I just talked Amazing Race with Jess last week. It's been an amazing, no pun intended, amazing race season. I've been having so much fun with that. So if you're not caught up on that, I definitely highly recommend. And I'm around. I'm waiting patiently for Big Brother season to begin.
Do you think David, because he naturally would watch The Amazing Race after Survivor because it was on, is he booking a one-way trip to Bulgaria to just house as much yogurt as possible from that 102-year-old lady?
Yeah, I mean, he's like, I don't get enough lactose in my system from the gallon of milk, so I think I'm going to find the old woman and the 101-year-old woman in Bulgaria.
Giga Chad milk maxing.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Laura, what would you like to plug out there for the listeners?
First, I do want to say that Maggie podcasting about Temptation Island is my butterfly effect for being as deeply entrenched in Survivor as I am.
Oh my, that's the small domino.
Yeah, I mean, she's the reason I'm into everything I'm into. So it's a great podcast. It's so funny. If you are watching Temptation Island, and you should start at season 1 on Peacock, and you're not listening to Kirsten and Maggie recapping it, you are missing out. So I will bear plug that, and then I will bear plug I'm everywhere on the internet, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Threads. I have a podcast called Fit Literate where we talk about bullshit internet fitness trends and diet culture and deprogramming your brain. We like to say it's like the caring and keeping of you for adults.
Mm-hmm.
And if you hate the idea of strength training, but you know you should be doing it and you want somebody to do all the homework for you, you can come train with me online, virtually from wherever you are in the world at the Energy Academy. I think that's it.
Yeah, you didn't say your handle for everything.
Oh, Laura.Girard, except on TikTok, it's LC Girard, which will haunt me until the end of my days.
LC Girard actually sounds like the name of some sort of, I don't know, like neo-noir detective. You know, it's that like I feel like there's something to even your initials themselves being a mystery.
I'll take it. It can be my alter ego.
Listen, if anything goes south, if any of these people are like, I broke my neck on the challenge because you told me to do this thing, they're like, I'm LC Girard. I don't know who
They're
that
like, I was
person is.
all focused on the foot stuff and I forgot about my grip strength. Yeah, sorry guys.
Well, you can all get a grip around my coverage. That sounds incredibly saucy, even for me. But I talked with David this week. It was a really fun conversation. David, obviously, as open in our chat as he was on the island about all his thoughts about his perceptions from the game. Obviously, reveals the question of the hour, which is came into the season with a lot of stakes as to what might be going on back at home should he win or lose Survivor. If you want to follow up as to where he is, what he's doing, and more importantly, who he is with, you can check out my interview there. I made the return to the Amazing Race podcast after Maggie so graciously filled in. Very fun episode breaking that down with Jess. Did an next interview there. I'm back in my usual swing of things after a week away. I'm covering The Last of Us. I'm covering Andor. I'm covering Battlestar Galactica. Plenty of stuff out there at a Mike Bloom type. That's going to do it for this week on the B&B. Such a fun episode of the show, such a fun episode of the podcast as well. Hope you all enjoyed it. We'll see what happens next week as we're framed and as the episode framed as well. Might be a 4 versus 4 situation. What does that mean? Are we going to rocks? Who the heck knows? This season really does seem a bit wide open now with David, who took up a lot of space, both physically, verbally, etc., out of the picture. I'm very intrigued to see what's going to happen in this last month or so of Survivor 48, and I hope you're joining us all as well. So be sure to check out the B&B. You can email us, rhapbnb@gmail.com, if you have any ideas of games or segments like this that you want us to do in future episodes. We are open to anything and everything. Special thanks to Scott St. Pierre and the entire team behind the scenes at RHAP for packaging this podcast for your eyes and ears, and Wolf from America for his fantastic theme song, which if you're listening in the audio version, waiting with bated breath to hear his mellifluous tones. Liana and I will hopefully be back next week. I think we'll have her back in our stead, get an update on the move and everything. But regardless, at least one of us will be here occupying the B&B as we will continue to break down Survivor 48. Thank you all so much for listening. Maggie, Laura, thank you both so much. This was a ton of fun. Until next time, everybody, we'll check you out at your next stay.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.